The massive data crystal hummed as it processed Earth's membership application in the depths of the Galactic Council's central computer. Thousands of species had submitted similar requests over the centuries, and the process had become routine. Ambassador Crix stretched his forearms and activated his viewing screen, expecting another boring afternoon of paperwork. But something caught his attention immediately. The humans had gone from discovering fire to building starships in just 10,000 years. Most species took at least 50,000 years to achieve interstellar travel. Crix's eye stalks twitched with curiosity as he scrolled through the data. These creatures had split the atom, walked on their moon, and built space stations all within a single century. Fascinating, he muttered in his native tongue, making notes on his datapad. The humans lived on a planet they called Earth, a world that seemed unusually hostile by galactic standards. High gravity, violent weather patterns, and an atmosphere that would kill most civilized species. Yet somehow these bipedal creatures had thrived there. Senior Analyst Vorth received the assessment request and barely glanced at it. Another military evaluation for another peaceful species seeking protection under the Council's banner. He scheduled it for the following week at Kepler Station, the neutral testing ground where all new species demonstrated their defensive capabilities. Usually these sessions involved showing off energy shields or explaining their conflict resolution meditation techniques. Vorth had seen it all before. The rabbit-like Thanari had brought flowers and sung peaceful songs. The crystalline Zephyrians had demonstrated their ability to create beautiful light shows that supposedly confused enemies into leaving them alone. Even the slug-like Morites had shown off their incredible ability to hide in their shells for decades, until threats went away. He expected nothing different from these humans. Meanwhile, Commander Lee Minho stood on the bridge of the human transport ship, watching the stars streak past through the viewport. His reflection stared back at him, a man in his 40s with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much. Behind him, his team worked quietly, preparing for what Earth Command called their most important diplomatic mission. Park Sora sat at a corner desk, her fingers flying across a holographic keyboard as she updated their presentation files. As Earth's leading diplomatic expert, she had spent months studying alien cultures, learning their customs, and preparing protocols that would help humanity make a good first impression. She believed in peace through understanding. Neither of them knew that their species' definition of conflict resolution would soon terrify an entire galactic civilization. They had prepared charts showing Earth's defensive capabilities, thinking the aliens wanted to ensure new members could protect themselves. Lee Minho had even toned down their military presentations, not wanting to seem aggressive to potential allies. The transport ship's engines hummed steadily as they approached Kepler Station, a massive ring-shaped structure floating in the void between star systems. Soon they would meet representatives from dozens of alien species, all curious about the newcomers from a small yellow star. What neither the humans nor the aliens realized was that this routine assessment would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The docking bay of Kepler Station buzzed with activity as the human transport ship settled into its berth with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Kim Tae-hyung stepped out first, his trained eyes scanning the alien architecture around them. As head of security for the delegation, he had studied every available file on the station's layout, but seeing it in person was different. The corridors were wider than expected, designed to accommodate species much larger than humans. Behind him, Choi Yuna struggled with a floating cart, loaded with presentation equipment. She had insisted on bringing their own technology, rather than relying on alien systems, not out of distrust, but because she knew their equipment inside and out. Her engineering background made her cautious about compatibility issues that could ruin their presentation. The walk to the assessment chamber took 15 minutes through winding corridors, filled with the strangest sights any human had ever seen. Creatures that looked like walking trees shuffled past, their bark-like skin rustling with each step. Floating jellyfish-like beings drifted overhead, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Kim Tae-hyung kept his hand near, his sidearm out of habit, though he had been strictly ordered not to draw it under any circumstances. In the observation deck high above the testing floor, 12 different alien species had gathered to witness the assessment. This was always an interesting break from their usual council duties. Most of them brought snacks from their homeworlds and treated it like entertainment. The Velkari representative, a creature resembling a giant praying mantis, clicked its mandibles in anticipation. The Zephyrians floated in their environmental suits, their crystalline bodies refracting the station's lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. Even the normally serious Threnodi had brought their younglings to watch, their slug-like forms leaving glistening trails on the observation. Platform.Council Representative Bleth activated his recording device and began documenting his observations. These humans were unlike anything he had seen before. Most civilized species had eyes on the sides of their heads, designed for watching for predators while grazing. But humans had both eyes facing forward, like hunters tracking prey. Their mouths were equally strange. When the humans smiled at the station crew, they revealed rows of sharp white teeth. Bleth shuddered and made another note. Most intelligent species had evolved past the need for such primitive dental structures, surviving on processed nutrients and energy supplements. The way they moved was unsettling too. Their bipedal gait seemed unstable, yet they moved with surprising speed and coordination. Bleth watched Kim Tae-hyung position his team around the testing chamber with military precision, each human taking positions that provided overlapping fields of vision and quick response capabilities. Choi Yuna finished setting up her equipment and ran through a systems check. Her screens flickered to life, displaying charts and graphs that meant nothing to the alien observers. To them, it looked like standard defensive capability documentation. They expected to see energy shield generators, perhaps some basic laser systems for asteroid defense, maybe even some impressive sensor arrays. The alien audience settled into their observation positions, many of them already planning their lunch after what they assumed would be another boring demonstration of peaceful defensive measures. Captain John Ji-woo stepped forward with what appeared to be a simple metal tube in her hands. The alien observers leaned forward with mild curiosity, expecting to see some sort of defensive tool or perhaps a scanning device. She held up the weapon with casual familiarity, her grip suggesting years of training and experience. "This is our standard infantry rifle," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "It fires a small metal projectile at approximately 3 times the speed of sound." The silence in the observation deck was immediate and profound. Several alien species had never heard the concept of launching solid objects as weapons. The Velkari representatives' mandibles stopped clicking mid-motion. The floating Zephyrians dimmed their natural luminescence as if trying to hide. John Ji-woo aimed at a reinforced target downrange and squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed through the chamber like thunder. The metal slug punched through the target, leaving a clean hole surrounded by twisted metal. She fired several more rounds in quick succession, each shot precise and devastating. "Doctor." Han Kyung-soo stepped up beside her, carrying what looked like a small cylinder. His calm professorial manner made his words even more disturbing to the alien audience. "This is a standard fragmentation grenade," he explained, as if discussing the weather. "When activated, it creates a controlled explosion that sends metal fragments in all directions within a 30-meter radius." The Threnodi younglings began making distressed whistling sounds, prompting their guardians to quickly usher them away from the observation windows. In the back row, 3 different species activated their emergency life support systems, flooding their breathing apparatus with calming chemicals. Councillor Thren's 4 arms worked frantically on his calculation device, his mathematical mind struggling to process the destructive potential of such simple devices. His aide leaned over, reading the numbers with growing horror. A single human soldier could carry enough destructive power to level a small settlement. "The beauty of kinetic weapons," Dr. Han continued, completely oblivious to the panic spreading through the observation deck, "is their simplicity and reliability. No complex energy systems to fail, no exotic materials required, just physics and chemistry working together." Lieutenant Song Minji wheeled out a much larger device, her movements efficient and practiced. The aliens pressed against the reinforced viewing windows, unsure whether they wanted to see what came next. This weapon was clearly designed for something far beyond personal defense. "This is our standard artillery piece," she said matter-of-factly. "Effective range of 40 kilometers, capable of delivering various payload types." She gestured to a rack of shells, each one the size of a small alien child. High explosive, armor-piercing, cluster munitions and chemical dispersal variants. The demonstration that followed shattered every assumption the alien observers had about civilized warfare. The artillery shells screamed across the testing range, its impact creating an explosion that shook the entire station. The reinforced target simply ceased to exist, replaced by a smoking crater. Song Minji consulted her datapad casually. Kill radius for soft targets is approximately 200 meters. Penetration capability against standard building materials is rated at 15 meters of reinforced concrete equivalent. In the observation deck, the Nexari delegate's tentacles were flying across his communication device, sending urgent warnings to his homeworld. His message was simple, but terrifying. "They don't fight wars, they conduct exterminations." Professor Yoon Ji-hye walked to the center of the presentation area, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the growing tension in the observation deck. She had spent decades studying military psychology at Earth's finest institutions, never imagining her research would one day horrify an entire galactic audience. "Warfare for humans is not simply about having better weapons," she began, activating a holographic display. "It's about understanding the enemy's mind and breaking their will to fight before the battle even begins." The translation systems struggled with her next words. Several alien languages had no equivalent terms for what she was describing. The concept of deliberately causing fear and despair in an opponent was so foreign to most galactic species that their computers simply displayed error messages. Major Kang Hyunwoo stepped forward, his military bearing evident in every movement. Behind him, images appeared showing human soldiers throughout history, their faces painted for battle, their eyes cold and focused. "Human military doctrine is built on a simple principle," he explained: "victory at any cost." The Velkari representative began making rapid clicking sounds, a sign of extreme distress in his species. In his world, conflicts were resolved through ritual combat between champions, with clear rules and limited consequences. The idea of entire populations dedicating themselves to destroying their enemies was incomprehensible. "We call it acceptable losses," Professor Yoon continued, her voice steady as she explained concepts that made the alien observers physically ill. Before any military operation, human commanders calculate how many of their own soldiers they're willing to sacrifice to achieve their objective. The numbers appeared on the screen, cold and clinical: casualty projections, resource expenditure calculations, civilian impact assessments. To humans, these were necessary tools for military planning. To the aliens watching, they represented a level of calculated brutality that defied their understanding of civilized behavior. Dr. Lim Sungmin took over the presentation, his background in military psychology making him the perfect person to explain humanity's most disturbing military concept. "Creating effective soldiers requires breaking down their natural reluctance to harm others," he said matter-of-factly. "We use psychological conditioning techniques to override their survival instincts and moral inhibitions." The Velthian observer's breathing apparatus began making alarming whistling sounds. His species had evolved from prey animals, and the concept of deliberately training individuals to suppress their flight response triggered every survival instinct he possessed. Medical technicians rushed to his aid as his vital signs spiked dangerously. "The training process typically takes several months," Dr. Lim continued, oblivious to the medical emergency unfolding in the observation deck. "We expose recruits to increasingly stressful situations, gradually building their tolerance for violence and death. By the end, they can function effectively in combat environments that would paralyze untrained individuals." Major Kang nodded approvingly. "The psychological impact on enemy forces is often more important than the physical damage we inflict. Fear is our most powerful weapon, When word spreads that humans are coming, many enemies surrender without fighting, the Yai. Alien observers sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were hearing. Most galactic conflicts were resolved through negotiation, resource sharing, or at worst, limited territorial disputes. The idea of systematically training entire populations to become efficient killers was beyond their comprehension. In the back of the observation deck, emergency medical teams worked frantically to stabilize 3 different species representatives who had gone into shock. The human presentation was only half finished. The massive holographic display flickered to life, filling the center of the chamber with images from Earth's ancient past. Analyst Shin Da-yoon stood beside the projection, her hand resting casually on the control interface. She had compiled this historical overview, thinking it would demonstrate humanity's progression toward more civilized forms of conflict resolution. She had no idea it would reveal something far more disturbing. Human warfare has evolved continuously over 10,000 years, she began, as the first images appeared. Ancient warriors in bronze armor clashed with spears and shields, their faces twisted in battle fury. Even in our earliest civilizations, we developed sophisticated tactics and strategies. The alien observers watched in growing horror as the footage progressed through human history. Medieval knights charged across battlefields, on horseback, their weapons designed for maximum lethality. The sound of clashing metal and battle cries echoed through the chamber's audio system, causing several species to cover their auditory organs in distress. The Zephyrians, normally calm and contemplative beings, began pulsing with agitated colors. Their crystalline bodies had never witnessed such organized violence between members of the same species. In their society, conflicts were resolved through harmonic resonance and shared consciousness experiences. Notice how humans adapted their tactics to overcome defensive positions, Shin Da-yoon continued, pointing to footage of ancient siege warfare. Massive catapults hurled burning projectiles over fortress walls, while soldiers used primitive explosives to breach gates. When faced with obstacles, humans don't retreat, they innovate. The progression continued through naval battles, showing wooden ships bristling with cannons, their crews fighting desperately as vessels burned and sank around them. The alien audience watched humans continue fighting even as their ships went down, some swimming through burning oil to reach enemy vessels. Captain Bae Jin-young stepped forward as the footage moved into more recent centuries. His military uniform was crisp and professional, his manner suggesting this was just another routine briefing. Human military evolution accelerated dramatically with industrialization, he explained. We learned to apply mass production techniques to warfare. The images now showed massive armies moving across landscapes, artillery bombardments that turned entire regions into cratered wastelands, and aerial combat between primitive flying machines. The aliens watched humans throw themselves into machine gun fire, charge across fields filled with explosives, and fight in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. A collective gasp echoed through the observation chamber when footage showed human pilots deliberately crashing their aircraft into enemy targets. The crystalline collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric framework, began flickering erratically before collapsing completely. Emergency technicians rushed to contain the energy discharge. Suicide missions are considered among the highest honors in human military tradition, Captain Bae mentioned casually, as if discussing weather patterns. Volunteers often compete for the privilege of sacrificing themselves for their comrades. The footage continued relentlessly. Humans fighting in frozen trenches underwater, in burning cities, and eventually in the vacuum of space itself. Every environment seemed to produce new forms of human warfare, each more intense than the last. In the observation deck, panic was spreading faster than station security could contain it. Representatives from 6 different species were filing formal complaints, demanding the presentation be stopped immediately. The Morites had retreated completely into their shells and refused to emerge. Yet the humans continued their presentation, genuinely believing they were demonstrating their species' resilience and adaptability rather than revealing themselves as the galaxy's most terrifying predators. Xenobiologist Keith's emergency transmission crackled through the observation deck's communication system, interrupting the chaos unfolding around the alien representatives. His voice carried the weight of sudden, terrible understanding as he addressed the council from his research station 3 systems away. "We made a catastrophic error in our initial species assessment." Keth's words cut through the panicked chatter. "I've been analyzing the biological data we received from Earth, and what we're witnessing isn't aberrant behavior. This is exactly what we should have expected." Dr. Oh Seung-hwan stepped forward on the presentation floor, unaware of the emergency consultation happening above. His background in evolutionary biology had prepared him to explain humanity's physical development, but he had no idea his academic presentation would serve as evidence in what was becoming an interstellar crisis. "Humans evolved on a planet with gravity 20% higher than galactic standard," he began, displaying Earth's environmental data. "Our world experienced 5 major extinction events, each one eliminating weaker species and driving evolutionary pressure toward maximum survival efficiency." In the observation deck, Keth's analysis continued over the communication link. "Look at their skeletal structure, their muscle density, their cardiovascular capacity. These aren't the traits of a species that evolved for peaceful coexistence. Every aspect of human biology screams apex predator." Commander Ryu Chae-young had been planning to demonstrate basic human physical capabilities as part of their defensive assessment. She began with simple exercises, not realizing that her casual display of strength and endurance was confirming the aliens' worst fears. She lifted weights that would challenge most alien species' mechanical equipment, moved with speed that made the observer's eyes water trying to track her movements, and demonstrated hand-to-hand combat techniques that could disable opponents 3 times her size. What she considered basic military fitness was revealing humans as living weapons systems. "Notice the binocular vision." Keth's voice grew more urgent. "Forward-facing eyes for tracking prey across distance, opposable thumbs for tool manipulation, highly developed problem-solving capabilities combined with pack coordination instincts. Their persistence hunters evolved for group tactics." Council. Member Zix's tentacles flew across his data interface, frantically updating threat assessment protocols that had never been designed to evaluate a species like humanity. Every biological marker he entered triggered warnings in the Council's security systems. The automated threat response was recommending immediate quarantine procedures. Sergeant Park Woo-jin began explaining what he thought was a routine tactical briefing, completely unaware that his words were being analyzed by terrified xenobiologists. "Human military units operate on pack-hunting principles refined over millions of years," he said proudly. "We track our targets relentlessly, coordinate attacks through complex communication, and never abandon wounded pack members." The realization hit the observation deck like a physical blow. These weren't civilized beings who had developed warfare as a necessary evil. They were predators who had weaponized their natural hunting instincts and applied industrial-scale organization to the process. "They don't fight wars," Keth's voice carried across the chamber with horrifying clarity. "They conduct planet-wide hunts against their own species. What we're seeing isn't military capability. It's biological imperative expressed through technology, the FHE." Human presenters continued their demonstration, genuinely proud of their species' accomplishments and resilience. They had no idea that every word, every display of capability, every casual mention of their military traditions was confirming their status as the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Above them, alien representatives began, quietly evacuating the observation deck, each one carrying the terrifying knowledge that humanity's request for council membership wasn't a plea for protection. It was a predator asking to join the food chain. Admiral Nam Taeyong stepped forward, with the confident bearing of someone discussing routine administrative matters. His weathered face showed the calm expression of a career military officer, accustomed to briefing civilian audiences. Behind him, holographic displays showed star maps marking recent human military activities in neighboring systems. "Over the past decade, we've had to address several minor security concerns in our local region," he began, his tone suggesting these were hardly worth mentioning. The Kepler 442 incident required some infrastructure adjustment, and we had to implement population relocation procedures on 3 separate occasions. The alien translators struggled with the euphemisms. Infrastructure adjustment translated roughly to complete destruction of surface installations in most galactic languages. Population relocation had no direct equivalent, but the contextual analysis systems began flashing warning indicators. Captain Lee Cherin consulted her datapad with professional efficiency. Her role was to provide statistical support for the Admiral's briefing, and she had prepared comprehensive reports that she believed would demonstrate human military precision and effectiveness. The Kepler incident involved approximately 2.7 million combatants, she stated matter-of-factly. We achieved objective completion with acceptable losses on both sides. Civilian displacement was kept to under 15 million individuals. The numbers hit the observation deck like a physical blow. The Velkari representative's compound eyes began spinning independently, a sign of complete sensory overload. For most galactic species, 15 million individuals represented their entire planetary population. The humans were discussing such numbers as acceptable collateral damage from a minor regional dispute. Admiral Nam nodded approvingly at the statistics. The conversion of civilian mining equipment to kinetic bombardment systems proved particularly effective, he continued. Standard asteroid processing vessels, when properly modified, can deliver planetary-scale firepower with minimal resource expenditure. In the observation deck, mathematical calculations were running on dozens of data systems simultaneously. The aliens were trying to comprehend how humans could convert peaceful mining operations into weapons of mass destruction so casually. The very concept violated every principle of civilized warfare they understood. Colonel Kim Dong-hyuk had been looking forward to this part of the presentation. His strategic planning background made him proud of humanity's preparedness for various conflict scenarios. He activated a new set of displays showing flowcharts and resource allocation matrices. Of course, these were relatively small-scale operations, he explained with academic enthusiasm. Our actual contingency planning covers scenarios up to and including galaxy-wide conflict management. We've prepared logistical frameworks for deploying human forces across multiple star systems simultaneously. The hive mind representative, a collective consciousness spanning millions of individual organisms, suddenly went silent. Its vast network of interconnected thoughts collapsed inward as protective instincts triggered species-wide hibernation. Protocols. Across 17 different star systems, hive mind colonies began shutting down all external communications and retreating into underground chambers. Resource mobilization protocols allow for converting our entire industrial base to military production within 90 standard days, Colonel Kim continued, completely unaware of the panic spreading through the observation deck. Population conscription models indicate we can field approximately 800 million combat-ready personnel while maintaining essential civilian operations. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout Kepler Station as alien representatives transmitted urgent messages to their homeworlds. The Council's automated threat assessment systems were overloading, unable to process the scale of military capability being casually discussed by what they had assumed was a peaceful species seeking protection. Admiral Nam concluded with what he considered reassuring words. Naturally, we hope such extreme measures will never be necessary. These preparations exist purely as deterrent forces to ensure regional stability. The alien observers realized with mounting horror that humanity's idea of regional stability involved the capacity to wage war across entire galactic sectors. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within minutes of the human presentation's conclusion. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the secured chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and electromagnetic pulses. The universal translator systems struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Meanwhile, the human delegation found themselves escorted to what their guides politely called comfortable waiting areas. The isolation chambers were luxurious by most standards, equipped with food synthesizers, entertainment systems, and communication arrays. But diplomat Young Hana noticed immediately that the communication systems only allowed internal station access, not external transmissions. "We're being quarantined," she said quietly to her companions, her diplomatic training helping her read between the lines of their hosts' overly polite behavior. "They're scared." Through her diplomatic channels, Junghana began monitoring the alien communication networks accessible within the station. What she discovered was chaos spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. Emergency broadcasts were flying between homeworlds, military assets were being moved to defensive positions, and several species had already begun evacuating their border colonies. Prime Councillor Vex's proposal dominated the emergency session's opening remarks. His species, the Thalassans, had survived for millions of years through cautious diplomacy and careful risk assessment. Everything about humanity violated their understanding of acceptable galactic citizenship. "Immediate quarantine of the soul system," Vex announced, his aquatic form undulating with agitation in his environmental tank. "Deploy containment barriers, restrict all travel, and classify humans as a Category 7 threat to galactic stability." The Category 7 designation had never been used before. It was reserved for species capable of threatening the existence of galactic civilization itself. The assembled representatives fell silent as the implications sank in. But Councillor Thren, whose mathematical mind had been processing human capabilities throughout the presentation, raised a different concern. "Quarantine assumes they'll accept containment," he said, his forearms gesturing frantically at his calculations. "Based on their military doctrine, they'll interpret isolation as a hostile act requiring response." Alternative proposals began emerging from the chaos. The Nexari delegate suggested immediate territorial concessions, offering humans entire star systems in exchange for non-aggression pacts. The crystalline Zephyrians proposed technology exchanges, hoping to buy peace through economic partnership. General Seo Yonghuan received the updated situation briefing through encrypted channels that somehow still functioned, despite their isolation. Earth Command had been monitoring galactic communications and was well aware of the panic spreading through alien networks. Their instructions were clear but flexible. Maintain diplomatic posture while preparing for any outcome. The general understood the delicate balance they faced. Humanity genuinely wanted peaceful integration with galactic civilization, but their military doctrine demanded readiness for conflict if diplomacy failed. Earth's leaders had anticipated that their military capabilities might cause concern, but the scale of alien reaction was surprising even to them. In the council chamber, the debate grew increasingly frantic. Some species advocated for preemptive strikes, while humans were still confined to their local region. Others argued for immediate appeasement and alliance offers. A few suggested attempting to negotiate humanity into a subordinate protectorate status. But as hour after hour passed, one reality became increasingly clear to every representative present. They faced a simple choice: have humanity as allies or as enemies. There was no middle ground, no compromise position that would satisfy both galactic security and human nature. The vote, when it finally came, approached unanimity before formal discussion even ended. Council Leader Supreme Yith's announcement echoed through the Grand Chamber with the weight of a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. His ancient voice, translated through systems that had served the Council for millennia, carried both resignation and hope as he addressed the assembled representatives. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby granted immediate, full membership with extraordinary military leadership privileges, he declared. The formal words masked the desperate calculation behind them. Better to have these apex predators as protectors than as conquerors. The isolation chamber doors opened with a soft hiss, and Admiral Nam Taeyong stepped through with the same calm. Professionalism he had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. Behind him, his team exchanged glances of surprise and relief. They had expected acceptance, but the speed and scope of the offer exceeded their most optimistic projections. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we accept this honor with gratitude." "And humility," the Admiral replied, his diplomatic training taking over. He understood the subtext perfectly. This wasn't just membership, it was conscription. The galaxy needed humanity's military capabilities more than humanity needed galactic civilization. Commander Park Sora immediately began working on integration protocols, her diplomatic background proving invaluable as she negotiated the practical details of humanity's new role. Resource allocation, command structures, communication systems and logistics networks all needed to be established. The aliens were eager to cooperate, offering whatever humanity required to begin protecting them as quickly as possible. Within hours, the first human warships began moving from Earth's defensive perimeter to strategic positions throughout galactic space. The vessels that had seemed so primitive compared to alien technology now appeared in a completely different light. Their brutal efficiency and devastating firepower were exactly what the galaxy needed to face threats that had terrorized civilized species for generations. Captain John Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned HSS Deterrent as it settled into orbit around the galactic core. Through the viewports, she could see ships from dozens of alien species maintaining respectful distances. Their weapons were powered down, their crews radiating relief rather than fear. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. Pirate fleets that had plagued trade routes for centuries suddenly found themselves facing human patrol squadrons. Border disputes that had simmered for decades were resolved when human mediators arrived with overwhelming military backing. Even the mysterious threats from dark space, creatures that had occasionally consumed entire colonies, began retreating from regions now protected by human forces. On worlds across the galaxy, alien populations experienced something many had never known: true security. Parents no longer feared for their children's future. Merchants traveled trade routes without armed escorts. Scientists ventured into previously dangerous regions of space, knowing that human warships were never more than a few hours away. The irony wasn't lost on humanity's leaders. They had sought membership in galactic civilization to learn from older, wiser species. Instead, they found themselves serving as guardians for creatures who had achieved peace by avoiding the very conflicts that had forged human strength. Captain John Jiwoo activated the communication array that would link her command post to every human military installation across the galaxy. Human Defense Command operational, she reported. All sectors secure. The galaxy's most dangerous predators had become its greatest protectors, and for the first time in eons the stars felt safe.